plagiarism and accusations of plagiarism, we're really talking about power dynamics. In this situation, I had between 10 and 20,000 followers on Instagram, if memory serves, and this person had less than 1,000. The friend of this person thought that I was punching down, that I was stealing ideas from a cosplayer that I didn't respect and didn't want to credit, and taking them as my own, as someone with more power in that situation. We're also, of course, talking about plagiarism. Let's just get the elephant out of the room, because one of my favorite video essayists just put out a 4-hour essay about plagiarism on YouTube a few weeks ago. I think it was like 2 weeks ago.
You can tell by the way I walk alone, man, no time to talk.
December 2nd. No fucking way this came out on December 2nd. I mean, it's January 17th. What do you mean it's January 17th? Is that... Oh my god. Hi. So I leave for MagFest in 24 hours. It's 3 o'clock right now. Oh boy. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm just gonna have to multitask on this one. The amount of stuff I have to get done before I leave to drive down to this convention is absolutely astonishing. It's flabbergasting. I am all the way flabbergasted over here. Full flabber, full gasted. Fuck. The power dynamics involved in James Somerton's plagiarism is exactly why I think it became such a scandal and why it captured our imagination for so long. He was actively stealing work from smaller queer and trans creators and using their words and their work to make a name for himself as a smart dude and someone that we could all look up to as a thought leader. In our current internet landscape, it's not that reach and visibility necessarily equates to financial stability or a livelihood, but they are still a certain kind of power, and James absolutely had that power. As a cosplayer, it has been really interesting to firsthand live through my own experiences in the shifting power dynamics of gaining clout. And there's more I want to say about that, but I forgot how much music they play at the storage unit. The idea that plagiarism can't be separated from an imbalance of power and a lack of respect is one of the big takeaways for me from Harris's video. I don't know why I just called him Harris. It's not like we're on a first name basis. So when people plagiarize, they do it because they think they can get away with it. They steal in instances where they think no one will notice, or no one will care, or some combination of the two. My number one best guy, Harris, describes details of a few examples of this even before he gets to the James Somerton main event. Like Philip, the YouTuber who copied voiceovers and video concepts from significantly smaller channels and passed it off as his own. The visibility on those other channels was way lower than his own, so the odds someone would clock the theft was really low. That was why he did it. Or when a Melania Trump speechwriter lifted huge chunks from a Michelle Obama speech, in that case, people definitely noticed, but the people who were outraged by it weren't Melania Trump's audience. Her audience maybe did notice, but they didn't care about the disrespect because they already didn't respect Michelle Obama. When you steal someone's work, you are sending the message not just that you don't value them, but also that the act of devaluing them probably isn't going to have any major consequences for you. And yeah, just like everywhere else, these kinds of power imbalances drastically shape whatever shit du jour is going down in cosplay. That's a good phrase. We should stick with shit du jour. That happens a lot in the cosplay community. My personal experience is that despite the fact that for the first 8 years I cosplayed, I had virtually no level of clout or influence to speak of, that is not my reality anymore. Like, I switched sides. I'm in a very different tier of visibility now, and for this video, I'm gonna be focusing way more on social capital than the ability to be, like, financially stable in your path as a creator. But even so, being a small creator is a label that is inherently relative. Now that I'm above 100K on all of my major platforms, I feel infinitely small. Like, I looked in the Palantir and I wish that I could unsee it. The more I become aware of the larger ecosystem of YouTube and its sheer scale, the more my own stuff feels objectively microscopic. But at the same time, I know if my past self from those first 8 years of cosplay could get into a time machine and hear me say that right now, they'd think I was being such a jackass. They'd be like, bro, what are you talking about? 100K is massive. Shut the fuck up. Because the idea of being a big creator or a small creator is necessarily based on perspective and perception. Both of these things
should she have long hair or short hair?
While actively contradicting each other.
I think long. You know what? Maybe short, actually. You just see what kind of wig.
When it comes to plagiarism, at least, what matters is that there are some dizzyingly
Damn, where'd
wide
all the
ranges
wigs
of
go?
influence that individual cosplayers can
I'm on
have.
Pinterest.
And that these power dynamics are what make plagiarism matter when we talk about it with regards to cosplay. About a year ago, something happened to me that made me really realize how much my own reality in cosplay has changed. I got a notification from Instagram that someone had tagged me in a story. It was a cosplayer named Sylph Stitches. They were working on a Korok cosplay, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I also have made a Korok cosplay. I debuted it the year before last, in 2022. But in the story, they were talking about how when they had been working on their idea for this Korok cosplay from Breath of the Wild, because Tears of the Kingdom wasn't out yet, they saw me working on mine, and they started to not feel as good about their cosplay. Specifically, they were worried that when they finished their cosplay and finally debuted it, people would assume that they had gotten the idea from me and copied it. Because I now have a higher level of visibility, if someone with less visibility starts to build a cosplay that's kind of similar, the assumption is that they got the idea from me, and not vice versa. There was no plagiarism in this situation. Two people had similar ideas around the same time, but even when no one is punching up or down, when there's no punching at all, these power dynamics can still cause accidental harm, which is why I want to bring these up before we even get started on theft time. Sylph Stitches came up with their own Korok design, and to be honest, I am absolutely obsessed. Like, I'm a major fan of this look. I think the capelet is so cute. I think the fact that they put little cutouts on their thigh highs to symbolize, like, the hole in the tree trunks where you shoot the acorns with the little acorn beads is so adorable. Sure, we both have overalls in our look, but, like, they're a funky little forest dude. I think going for overalls with that is not at all that big a leap. And I was actually planning on making a giant spinny leaf. I think acorn beads is so adorable. Sure, we both have overalls in our look, but, like, they're a funky little forest dude. I think going for overalls with that is not at all that big a leap. And I was actually planning on making a giant spinny leaf prop. Like, if you look at my earliest sketches of this look, I started to draw one, but then I was like, oh, I'll figure it out later. We'll see if I have time for that. And they actually did the damn thing. They made one, and it's functional, and it is so awesome to see someone complete an idea that I had and didn't see through to its execution, because I'm just glad that that spinny leaf exists in the world. Look at it, it's so cool. I truly love their cosplay. I think the silhouette is so cute and the details are so smart, and it sucks if even for a moment they thought that all that hard work might not get recognized because of what I already did. I really hope that wasn't the reality for them. I hope they got their own shine, because this cosplay deserves it, period. And at the end of the day, like, we're both pulling from the same source material for our designs. We're both borrowing similar elements. If it's derivative of anything, it's derivative of the good people of Hyrule. Cosplay and being derivative. I wonder if we're gonna talk about this intrinsic tension later. I wonder if I'll extrude this idea a little bit more. But I want to back us up real quick, because so far we've been talking about cosplay where there is like a level of design and interpretation, where that design and interpretation is where the crossed wires over plagiarism and stealing ideas is coming in play. But that's not all of cosplay. Sometimes you're just doing a recreation. Sometimes you're just doing like a one-to-one of something. Sometimes you don't want to do a reimagined, reinterpreted version of a character. Sometimes you just want to be the character. So what do we do with that? I mean, can you plagiarize with that? Seems unlikely. Must be a lot harder to do plagiarism with that. Coat got stuck on my arm. I'm free. I mean, if you're doing a cosplay that's just a straight up and down recreation of a character, I guess the only way that you could really plagiarize is if you didn't give credit to someone who did something involved in making that recreation. So just give credit. If someone took the picture that you're posting, you can give them credit with a tag. If someone made the pattern or the 3D print file that you used to make this, or if you commissioned someone for the wig or whatever part of the cosplay you did not make yourself, you just credit them with a tag. Easy peasy. Short section. This is generally a really good idea, but there will always be some bumps along the way, usually human error and also, frankly, the impact of time. You know, when you're first debuting a new build, it is so easy to remember absolutely everyone you want to tag. You can shout out even all the shops where you got stuff, but then when you've already posted the same thing half a dozen times, when it's like a throwback, when it starts to be years and years and years later and people have changed their acts and you don't know where the store is. I'm coming up on year 15 of cosplaying, so for me, that stuff happens a lot. I mean, let's revisit an example from the beginning of this video. I did this in 2019. That'll be 5 years ago this summer. And I have posted this specific video at least half a dozen times over the years. Have I mentioned every single time that my girlfriend meticulously dyed the wigs herself and helped me out with all of the styling for the hair because I did not feel like doing the hair on this thing? No, I haven't. So I mentioned that like in the 11th hour, my then roommate did me the most life-changing solid by offering to paint the shoes for me. So they went in there with like a paintbrush and turned these cheap Amazon heels into the pink fantasy we saw on the runway. No, I don't mention that every single time. Obviously, those tiny omissions aren't an act of intentional malice on my part. It's just something that happens over time and with reposting something for years and years. And whether or not something like that, something that is a very genuine forgetting or something that wouldn't fit in the caption, whether that feels like plagiarism depends a lot on the circumstances. I just think you can really tell when someone is excited about a cool resource in their community, which people that make patterns and do commissions are a resource. You can tell when someone who uses those resources is excited about them and wants to share and uplift them and make sure that they stick around, when someone is genuinely trying to hype up your work and drive business to you, and when someone is trying to use a level of obfuscation to make it seem like their costume just appeared out of thin air. Some people care more about a seamless, gorgeous end product than all the hard work and all of the individual people that got them there. And I think that kind of distinction is way more intangible than just remembering to plug a shop in your description every single time. And I gotta say, having an honest mistake feel like an intentional miscrediting used to be my absolute worst fear. The fear of being one of the bad ones genuinely slowed me down for many years, and I wish that I had trusted more in the community that we all have instead of being so afraid that someone would accuse me of intentionally harming them. Like, I didn't grow on social media because I was so scared to crop a photo that my photographer friends would feel disrespected by that. I really used to just post my horrible grainy whips and be like, well, that's that. I posted it once. Why am I not blowing up? And I am not the only one with this anxiety about being one of the bad ones, about turning into a cosplayer who gets a kind of reputation for not uplifting other people in their community. I know this is a common fear. I know this is why I get so many DMs from people asking if it's okay if they can cosplay a version of a design that I did, or something similar to it. They saw what I was doing and they felt inspired by it, so they want to make something of their own, but they want to make sure they're doing it okay. They want to make sure they're not stepping on any toes. So can they do that? Is that a thing? One of the biggest moments in the H-Bomber Guy video, Harris's video, my dear friend, is when he shows an image of one of James Somerton's scripts and he has highlighted every single part that is taken word for word from someone else. It's an astonishing image. It is a very clear visual look at the extent of James Somerton's plagiarism. But cosplay isn't like that. You can't copy and paste a physical object. There just isn't really an equivalent to reading someone else's words. James Somerton built a career convincing people that he had really good ideas. But in cosplay, ideas are almost nothing. What really counts is the work. When we make shit with our hands and our bodies, we are engaging in one of the coolest and most human things we can ever do. Crafting and sewing and building tangible things will never stop being something that I love with everything that I am. Like, I love that in a deeply uncomplicated way. I just think it's good. Ideas don't require any commitment. You don't have to actually cut into the expensive fabric when you're having an idea. You don't have to confront the possibility that your engineering plan might not work and maybe the prop isn't going to stay up how you thought and you need to figure it out. Like, those are the very real moments where you are doing the damn thing. Sure, ideas are energizing and spicy. They are important and they have a role to play, but they are nowhere near as important as actually seeing something through to its execution. There's a reason why I don't talk a lot about upcoming builds until I know how I'm going to be doing it. If I shared every cool cosplay idea I had that I never actually built, I would just be passing along like the burden of that unrealized potential onto you guys. In 2020, I knew that I really wanted to make a D&D cosplay of some kind. And somewhere along the way, I had the idea that it would be fun to do a D&D kind of cosplay in the style of an overloaded fantasy merchant, the kind you see in a lot of Zelda games. I'm loving it. Several weeks later, I made this. I knew full well I was not the first person to take a generalized idea about D&D and turn it into a costume. When I was researching online, I found a ton of people who had already done this in some shape or form, and I'm sure there's even more that I couldn't find. But I didn't really care. I knew that even though I had come to the idea on my own 100%, I knew I hadn't taken the idea from someone else, I was at peace with the fact that other people had already done this thing, because I knew that my execution was going to be what mattered here. I knew what would make my cosplay unique was the way that I visually designed it, and the way that I would actually get it wearable and functional one way or another. My brain is constantly generating new and exciting cosplay ideas, and I'm not delusional enough to think that each one of those is precious and unique and singular. I do not feel any kind of way if someone cosplays the same idea as me. Also, this personal stance has really changed now that I have more visibility in the cosplay community. Like, now that my work reaches somewhat more people, I just can't keep as tight a grasp on, like, the things that I do. I don't have as much control over them. They're out there in a wider part of the world for people to do stuff with. That's fucking entropy, baby. I don't know if that's entropy. Is that entropy? I should know this. I went to school for physics. And to be so clear, people seeing my work and being inspired by it is why I do it. Two people can have the same idea and make totally different things, and I think that's awesome. It is such an honor and a privilege to be able to share work that gets seen by people, and I just hope in my heart of hearts that I get to keep doing that, because I can't think of anything better. So, you know, there you go. There are no original ideas, and we all just play in the sandbox together, and everything's great. No more nuance needed here. That's it. There is a middle step between the idea and the construction. We talked about it a bit before. It's how we turn a little forest cylinder dude into an outfit, or how we get from an animation model into something that'll have depth and interest. That design phase is work. Deciding where things go and what embellishment looks balanced and what embellishment is too much is work. The very first original design I made, where I was turning something not human in source material into something human for me to wear, was actually a My Little Pony cosplay in 2012. I am not then, and am not now, still a visual artist, so I iterated by just messing around with fabric and stuff. But there are people who are visual artists who build careers on this kind of thing, who make a living by designing versions of characters and concepts for people to cosplay and create. If someone were to take one of their really intricate and thought out designs and build it in person and say, hey, I both made this and also designed it, too. I definitely think that would cross the line into something plagiarism-y. There are personal reasons and personal contexts